And welcome back, to a black screen apparently. Let's get us in there. There we go. Welcome back to Mixed Media. We're here for another live show where hopefully we don't have too many technical difficulties. We're scrambling to get this together as I spent a lot of today traveling. But hopefully everything will be good and ready to go. We have another show where we're going to be talking about some of our favorite stuff, whether it's in video games, well, actually not video games because Nathan's not here today, but whether it's in music or movies or whatever. That's what we like to do on this podcast, is basically talk about anything art, whether it's philosophy, business, reviews, pop culture, news, pretty much anything you could possibly think of. But we do it in a high level of depth, which I think is what makes us rather unique. You can find pretty much a topic or talk about literally any kind of thing related to those things on our podcast if you want to check those out. But before we move on, we should introduce ourselves. So my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella based out of Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania.
Hi, I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and media composer living in Los Angeles.
Yes, and usually we have a third, Nathan, my brother, who does video game topics. But he's not here today because of finals. And just to address the first thing first is I know last episode I promised the AI roundtable would be happening today, where we're going to talk about anything related to AI art, basically. But a lot of scheduling conflicts occurred. So some of the guests that I wanted to bring on couldn't come on anymore, and Nathan also had his finals, which he forgot coincided basically with the roundtable. So it's better for us to do it next week, but I think it should be a fun one because we're going to be, I don't know, just kind of exploring what AI basically will do, is doing, complications, etc. in the art space. And if you're interested in any of that, I know it's a confusing topic and a controversial one, so it should be a good episode. That'll be happening next week. So yeah, how was your week, Ben?
Good. Last week was, kind of more relaxing. I had my master's recital last Sunday, so 8 days ago. So that's kind of most of it, what I have done, the big thing. So kind of a more relaxed week. I still did plenty of, other things, like playing on some more media composition stuff, doing some to play a lot of alto flute on some James Bond stuff. It's kind of fun. What else? I spent quite a bit of time this week. Also, actually, I have it over here. Give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago that I bought this German flute from about 1890.
Yeah, you said it was going for cheap for what it is.
Yeah. I really need to talk to somebody. Well, I need to do two things with it. One, I need to get it to somebody who's a specialist on this instrument, of these kinds of instruments, to kind of do some repair work on it. And I also need to talk to somebody who's a experience with playing this, because it is very different than the modern metal cylindrical concert flute. But I spent quite a bit of time playing it this week, playing some appropriate repertoire on it. Very interesting.
Yeah. I assume it sounds very different.
Yeah. For a number of reasons. Go on for ages about the difference between this and the modern flute. And very complicated history of how, even though the modern flute was invented in Germany, but pretty much everybody wanted to play it except for the Germans, which is why this is about 40-ish, 42-ish years after the modern flute was first debuted in about the same exact location, but the German players are still playing this. Quite fascinating. Has a lot of really interesting repercussions for playing. Looks like I'm frozen on the on your screen.
Oh, that's weird. Oh, you're not frozen on Skype. So that's an editor issue. I'll reload you in.
Okay.
You can keep talking.
Okay. Yeah, lots of interesting repercussions for, playing late romantic German and Russian music. But Russians also mostly use these up until really, it doesn't get fully replaced until after the First World War, um, in the professional level. So very interesting instrument.
Yeah.
I'll put it down here. Give me 1 second.
Yeah. While Ben is doing that, I forgot to give a shout out to 3 or 4 actually awesome people. That's Rob Sharma. I'm just shouting out the locals people. Rob Sharma, 99 Crime, Post, and K Kairos or Kai Kairos. 3 of those people have social media presences. You should totally go follow them. I'm not saying that just because they're our followers, but because they also do awesome stuff. They put a lot of work into their craft. So Post, you can find them on words. You can find him on Steam. If you go to Steam, you can find his game on there. I don't know if searching Post would be enough because I think his publisher name is different. But I will probably at some point during the stream find a link to his Steam page, and you can go check out his demo game that is out right now. And you can also follow 99 Crime on YouTube. He puts out some like 8-bit music stuff, which is really interesting. And who am I missing? Kai Kairos is on Twitch a lot. I think that's his main platform. So if you search up Kai Kairos on Twitch, you'll find him on there. So shout out to those awesome people. Was there anything else in your week, Ben, going on?
No.
Are you back home or?
No, I'm in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Are you there for the summer, or are you coming back?
I'm gonna come back in like the end of June. I'm gonna fly out to see my brother in Hawaii for like 10 days, beginning of June. So
sweet, interesting. Have you been to Hawaii before?
Yes, I was there a few weeks ago with with the University Wind Ensemble.
Oh, you said that. Yes. You did say that. Yeah.
Yes, but ironically, because my brother and his girlfriend live out there, that happened to, the week I was there happened to be the exact week of the Boston Marathon, which he was running. So he was out there in Boston.
Gotcha. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
My week was pretty crazy. Just crazy busy, but also like I don't know, like I got sapped for like motivation. So I was really slow with everything, and I don't know, sometimes those weeks happened and just kind of let it roll off. And whatnot. But this week hopefully will be better. I am on the verge of buying a house. I think I've been mentioning house buying for a while now, but like I'm like actively going to showings and stuff like this, and almost bought a pizzeria. It's a long story. Very long story. It would have been very interesting. It still might happen, actually. There's a outside chance that might happen. But it's actually the building on the most prominent corner of town, which, for business purposes, is quite useful. It's a high traffic area, and it has a very large flat wall where I could put a gigantic, beautiful mural there. That was one of the concepts.
I thought you were going to say like project a film.
That would also be sick. Although I would have to close the street, which in a small town like this, if it's an event, like as long as I'm not doing that like once a week, it's possible.
They like in the historic district of Ellicott City, which is I'm from just outside of the historic district. Historic district mostly notable for all the massive flooding in the past 10 years, but they do that. They have like a side of a building, and during the summer, I think every single Friday, or maybe it's Saturday, they just close stuff down. They have a film on projection on the side of this building.
That's super cool. That is super cool. Yeah. Yeah, I probably could do that if I had that building. Like, I don't know. It's a whole thing. I have to run numbers again tonight on that building because there's an offer on it. We'll see. We'll see if it works out. I don't think. I mean, there's like competing with like other people like me who are kind of entrepreneurial, and that's one thing. Then there's competing with people who just like are buying things on a dream, if you get what I mean. And there's no way to compete with them because they'll just, they'll just go to the moon with the price. So we'll see how that goes, and it might not be the smartest thing to do as of now. But the pizzeria wasn't the point. Point of the building. It's just what used to be in the commercial front of the building. I was going to lease that out to a business, potentially another pizzeria. We'll see, or we would see if I bought it. And the top had 2 apartments, and I was going to turn one into a mini office potentially, and then the other one would be where I live, which would be pretty nice. And then I could put a huge, gigantic mural dedicated to the history of TV in Mount Carmel, which is the first high school TV station to ever broadcast was in Mount Carmel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I would have done a beautiful mural that would have sort of commemorated TV in Mount Carmel and also the future of TV in my company. So that would have been the sort of idea of it. It would have been gold and beautiful, but we'll see. We'll see. That's very unlikely, I should say. But stuff like that has been happening to me all week. I think that's kind of been distracting me from stuff. I think that's where the lack of motivation has come from, is because I'm like, I need to live somewhere. I need to get a house, and it's a little stressful to figure out what to do. So, but it's cool to be able to even contemplate stuff like that in a place like this, which, everything is so darn cheap. So, yeah. And other than that, I was in New York for the first time since I left over the weekend for my cousin's first communion. So went to go visit there, and yeah, I didn't. There was no desire to stay. I was kind of like, get me out of here. So I was happy to be, I guess, vindicated emotionally in my decision making, because I was just like, why did I want to be here originally to begin with? I didn't really get it after my flight. So there you go. So that's been my week. How about any news? Any news stuff going on?
I suppose the biggest thing in the past week, honestly, I didn't think it was like the biggest deal in the world, but every, news outlet painted it as like potentially cataclysmic for the music. The Ed Sheeran versus Ed Townsend copyright case was, to be honest, I hadn't heard of it until the day before, and everyone was like, the judge is going to be ruling on this week. It's, non-musical people were like, it's gonna be cataclysmic to the musical industry. Like, what? Apparently, Ed Townsend is, I guess, the co-songwriter with Marvin Gaye of "Let's Get It On," and this was a case about Ed Sheeran's 2014 song called "Thinking Out Loud." Don't know it. I don't know much about Ed Sheeran. Honestly, I know some of his stuff, but not something I pay any attention to. Apparently it was a somewhat dramatic court thing. Ed Sheeran came in and played guitar to try and demonstrate his points to the jury. They had,
I wonder what the context of that is. I don't even know why that would be necessary. Couldn't you just play the song?
I don't know.
Wait. Before I continue on, I know exactly what his lawyer is probably thinking, though, is if he can play in front of the jury, it'd be charming. If he could charm them into being persuaded.
Yeah, so I guess at stake here was the chord progression plus harmonic rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and whether that constitutes enough of the essence of "Let's Get It On" for it to be copyright infringement. It seemed kind of flimsy to me. Not that I had studied either song, but just reading what other people who they had a whole bunch of expert testimony. Now, how many people are really experts on this stuff? I don't know. My guess is that they got like some local, musicology professors who listened probably to both songs once, and I could be wrong, but I don't think
Yeah.
there are any people who really are truly experts on this kind of stuff. Um, I don't know. It seemed kind of silly to me that, like, in the past, this kind of stuff gets struck down pretty regularly, right? You can't copyright chord progressions, and I mean, from what I understand, it's like a similar kind of like rhythm to the chords, but not exactly the same. And I mean, it's a really common chord progression anyway, and it's kind of a common feel. So, this would be like, well, I've copyrighted the waltz. Like you can't have dun 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 dun. Yeah, you can't
Yeah.
do that. That would be kind of absurd. Um, well, Ed Sheeran won.
Oh, really?
So yes, he did
Oh, that's
not.
really surprising.
He did not. He did not violate Ed
Oh wait. Oh, he was
Townsend's.
the one who was. Oh, okay. I misunderstood.
Yeah,
Okay,
Ed
that
Townsend
does make
was
sense.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So no copyright violation. Apparently Ed Sheeran had made a big deal about this too. He said that, like, if he lost, he was going to quit music forever.
Oh.
So I don't know. I guess he was emotionally attached to this case. Apparently,
Did he
I
even
don't
write
know
it? Maybe he
what.
did write.
Oh, I prob. You know what? I don't know.
Yeah.
My guess is just knowing how songs are written these days. Probably not. But I guess given that he was a plaintiff, he had enough, um, control over it, legal
Yeah.
control over it, that he was the plaintiff. So
Yeah.
that's the big musical news. I don't know that. I mean, I guess it would have been odd if he had lost, and like I said, then well, someone should have copyrighted the waltz, a couple hundred years ago. But I don't think there was ever likely that he was going to lose. So
The question actually to me would be like, if he did lose, couldn't someone earlier, way earlier, say, well, I have some iteration of that thing. You could even find
right.
an example so early that it would be in the public domain either way, if that
Well,
makes
so
sense.
so so right. So there are some people. So the commentary on this that well, then somebody else should just sue Ed Townsend and Marvin Gaye for copying their song from. So
Right.
there probably is something out there that fits the same criteria that came earlier.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So
No.
so
I think
yes,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it seems like the norm that has been established by courts in terms of musical copyright over the last few decades has been reinforced, I guess.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Music actually has a lot of exceptions specifically, or not exceptions, has a lot of special privileges in copyright law because of when a lot of the copyright law was updated was, what, like the 90s or something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like at the advent of digital music. And so music has a lot of special privileges that don't appear elsewhere, and it's very fascinating because I think there's a philosophical like issue in the copyright law that there's like just some philosophical contradictions between what is copyright and what is not copyright. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I'm no expert on this, but it seems to me that people have attempted, like in this case, they kind of go after things, that, like, maybe a reasonable equivalent in like the world of visual art would be like, well, I painted a mountain in the right corner of my landscape.
yeah,
I'm like, okay, if that is copyrightable, then like you've gotten rid of landscape painting kind of
yeah,
thing. But it seems like people, no, I don't know anybody who would try making such a ridiculous claim in the painting world, but people try it in the musical world to no success, but they keep trying it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's an interesting thing. I've thought about doing this for our locals page, even though I actually kind of abhor the concept from like a. I don't know actually. I guess I haven't thought about it enough. Maybe I should do a discussion topic on this. But like, you could theoretically make a commentary to a movie and just talk, like, do a talk over commentary and release it without any copyright issues because of the way fair use works. Um, and it would be, I mean, obviously, such a thing would be educational. It would be, um, it would be transformative. It would fit all the criteria. People have done it before, and have won those cases. People don't know this, but you can find like whole movies with just like commentary, people just talking commentary over it. Some of it more useful than others. um, over films, and that's completely legal because of the way that fair use has developed over time. I don't actually disagree somewhat with it, but there's like some weirdness when it gets around additive, like what adds to the work. Like people will say that just reacting along to a movie as if you are a friend in the same room or something like this, right, is an additive thing to the experience enough to, and whether a court or not would agree is kind of a toss-up, because we've seen in music contexts that could be okay, and the court always caveats this with saying this is a case-by-case thing, which is kind of like a, this could vary in some ways that look contradictory, but you know, but we have no like principled, like, way to pin this down in a sort of like a philosophical way. And I think we kind of need to like fix that, sooner rather than later, because it's slowly taking away revenue from all digital art forms. And some people are able to embrace it. Like if you're a rapper and you're smaller, especially, people reacting to your stuff could help you. And so like, there's not really a damage, as much to you as it could be for someone who's actually larger, or someone who's really small. I've seen that happen before, and people will not even go check out the original author artist because they are more interested in the reactor's personality than they are with the actual core music. So it actually is kind of leeching on the really small person. So there's like weird stuff like that that's going on that kind of needs to be fixed in copyright law. It's an interesting topic. But maybe I'll challenge this and do on our locals. I'll do a watch along with commentary. Maybe I'll do some intense commentary on some film, and I'll just post the whole thing, with just auditory commentary on our locals. Maybe we'll see. But yeah. Any other music news or?
That's what I have.
Yeah, for me, for film, I hadn't been paying attention very much at all. Let me actually look through some cursory headlines on one of the services I subscribe to, and see if there's anything. No, not interesting. More remakes as usual. Yeah, no, I can't think of anything really. All the headlines are pretty much announcements of remakes. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Last week I covered the fact that Mario movie crossed 1 billion, which was kind of crazy, which was kind of a big deal. But I guess that's old news now, so. Cool. Shall we move on to the first topic of the day?
Sure.
Sweet. Well, as we transition over to our first topic of the day, I just want to reiterate my thanks to our great local subscribers. If you're on Rumble right now, there's a big red, it's like a salmon red color button that says join. If you click that button, it'll go straight to our locals page. And on locals, you can support us for $5 a month. You get a whole bunch of perks. The list of perks are on there. We have a locals chat on Discord, and you get access to the, I always mess it up, the live whiteboard right here on the side of the screen, which I hope by the end of the year, we'll have at least one episode where someone actually takes advantage of this and draws I think, is it maybe Post can draw? I don't know if he's in the chat right now. Someone can draw in our locals group. So I want someone to make some art, some graffiti as we as we talk along. But yeah, and all other links that you might need are mixedmediapodcast.com. And now we're gonna go over to our first segment of the day. And here we go.
Mixed Media Music.
All right, welcome to Mixed Media Music, the portion of Mixed Media Podcast dedicated to all things related to music, with a particular emphasis on media music and classical music. And my name is Ben Costello. I am a flute player and media composer living in Los Angeles, and I'm the main host for Mixed Media Music. And I am assisted by my co-host. Here we go.
Yes.
I'll let him introduce himself.
So my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company out of Ariella. Wow, I've said this so many times I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm just like rattling it off. Based out of Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania.
All right. And normally we have a third co-host, Nathan, who is not here today. So today on Mixed Media Music, we're going to be talking about the Alexander Desplat's 2019 score for the 2019 Little Women. I guess there are like 7 Little Women films out there throughout history. But I guess most recent one that I'm aware of. This is a directed by Greta Gerwig. I know a little while ago we talked about Greta Gerwig and Lady Bird. Have you seen her Little Women, Irving?
No, I have not.
I think it's the next film she did.
Yeah.
I have to say I enjoyed this a lot more than Lady Bird. I've only seen it once. I saw it in theaters right when it came out with my family. And maybe it would have helped me to rewatch the film itself, but I haven't really had time for that. So I'm going off some of my recollections of the film. But I know I enjoyed the film. And also, to be fair, though, I've never read Little Women, or seen any other Little Women films. So this is like my only experience with the actual, story material. So, for better or worse, I don't know. If you're a fan of Little Women, I'm sure you have feelings about that. I know my mom certainly did.
It's based off of a novel by who again?
Alcott, I think is her last name.
Oh, yes.
Louisa May Alcott.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this is actually filmed mostly like in the locations where she lived, in Massachusetts. So, and I've been to some of the places too. They film the scenes on the beach at Cranes Beach, which is a really lovely place. And although you have to be very careful in the summer when you go there, I think they went they filmed it in like the exact right 2-week period where it starts getting warm and sunny, but right before all of the really awful biting flies.
Oh.
Wait, yeah. So I've been there only when we get these really painful flies, biting you, drawing a lot of blood, and
Oh, okay.
But a very pretty place. But yes. But yes, you I guess they must have had the funds to entirely rent the beach at the exact right time for these scenes. I did not have that luxury when I've been there. Okay, so I will say right off the bat that the film is nice. I really enjoyed the music, and in a kind of odd way, because I know I've mentioned this before, but when I watch a film for the first time, often one of two things will happen. Like the music will immediately stand out, or I'll be like, wait, there was music. and then I'll go back and like determine whether I liked it or not. And this was one of those like in between cases where the music certainly made an impression on me, but I couldn't really remember any of it at the same time. Like I knew it was really good, but I really couldn't analyze it except for in the very last scene, where the music kind of takes over for like the last 60 seconds or so. But I went back and listened. Went back. I as soon as I got home, I listened to the score. I'm like, oh yeah, wow, what an incredible score! Like my like it, sense, without really being consciously thinking of it, was pretty accurate on this. Of course, Desplat is a pretty well-known composer. He's won the Oscar for The Shape of Water and for Grand Budapest Hotel. He was nominated for an Oscar for this, although he didn't win. I can't remember what won that year.
What year was it?
I think this is the first Oscars we covered on the show.
Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember either. You can probably go find it somewhere in our archives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, what's interesting to me too about this score, I was just looking at some information on it, and it seems to me like it's a score that's not very well known. Well, it's certainly not talked about much by the general public at all. But and it's not that well known amongst musicians here either. Actually, one of the media composition recitals that I played on, we played like live to picture on the short film this guy scored, and actually I'm going to be recording that and another short film score with this guy on Saturday.
Oh, cool.
I said to him, we were talking about this music afterwards, and I said, something about it reminds me of Desplat's Little Women score, and said, that I see that. So he knew what I was talking about, but I feel like it's not a score that people that I know generally are familiar with. But despite that, I think there's more stuff written about this score by critics, and more stuff that from like Desplat and Gerwig about this score than I can think of for any other score for like any film. I mean, yes, you can find a ton of analysis of like the Star Wars or Harry Potter scores, but like good luck getting a lot of information out of John Williams on this score, on any of those scores. But there is no shortage of stuff on this score for some reason that's easily available on the internet. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So I'm going to read a couple of quotes because I think they're kind of revelatory. So there's a really fascinating interview with Desplat and Gerwig where they talk about their 5 favorite moments of 5 favorite scenes with music in the film, and there's some really interesting stuff that Gerwig says. So first, apparently the main thing is she asked him to write something as a mix of Mozart meeting David Bowie. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not sure what Mozart is quite easy to hear in this score. David Bowie, I don't quite get. But that's what she asked for. Maybe I need to listen to more David Bowie. So I don't know. But that's kind of an interesting introductory thing. Apparently, she deliberately sought him out because she really loved his work in particular. And he said, well, it's a good thing because I really liked Lady Bird. Okay. And so what Gerwig says essentially that what she really likes about his music is that it is beautiful but not saccharine, and is always has this exacting quality to it. It already senses a certain loss, which is what I was looking for. Okay. So beautiful but not saccharine is an exacting quality and senses a certain loss that isn't present yet.
By the way, The 2020. It was the 2020 Oscars, and Joker won the.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So she also says that what she particularly likes about his music in general, but especially this score, she says that so she wanted something that was a combination of a ballet and a musical that kind of works as a period piece, but is not exactly period music, but somewhat in that realm.
Mhm.
Hence the David Bowie, I suppose. He says plenty of stuff about that too, but we'll finish what she says. So she says that she likes the quote deceptive lightness of the music, and that it's always emotional, with a sense of contradictory emotions, and still has this emotional weight. Right, so it's deceptively light. It has this emotional weight, and it's always pleasurable without being cloying. Okay. And Desplat responds, well, he says, the reason that he thinks that this is the case, he says that he, in contrast to the American composers, he says that he's a French composer, and he's brought up in the French tradition of film scoring, and I'm not as familiar with that. Although if I look at someone like Michel Legrand and like the music for like Umbrellas of Cherbourg, I can see that. It always has this charming lightness to it. What he says though is that he's always trying to be precise and concise, and unlike the Americans who follow action, he follows the characters. And he says that that's what makes the music for this film work really well, because there isn't a ton
stroke.
of maybe.
Yeah, is it true? Do you think, or generally?
I don't know. I think if you ask a lot of American composers, they would say that they're trying to follow the characters, but we do have a trend to make kind of a lot of action movies for our biggest movies, at least lately. And if you're scoring Godzilla versus King Kong or something like that, or Captain Marvel 10 or whatever, I don't know what the latest Marvel film is. There's probably not a whole lot of character depth for you to follow, but there are big explosions for you to follow.
Yeah.
So, and it probably does work in this context, because are there really any dramatic action? Is there any dramatic action in this film? No. Right? It's about four young women growing up, and their kind of subtle interactions with each other, and learning about themselves, and falling in love with the same people, and that kind of stuff. There's really no action to follow, even if one wanted to.
Yeah.
So I guess in that sense it works. You're not gonna be it would be a little bit too on the nose when you have the two sisters who are in love with the same guy, and they both look at him, and I can come up with all sorts of ways it would be way too on the nose, and it wouldn't have worked. If you really, if you're trying to nail that hit point, right? So I guess I see what Desplat's saying. Okay, now a few other quotes here. So I'm gonna just read what Desplat said about Mozart and David Bowie. He says, upon being asked to write this, he says, "I think energy, pulse, melodies, joy, and rhythm, because Mozart has a lot of rhythm. And Bowie, of course, there's something pop about the art direction of this film." I'm not sure there's anything pop in it, but I don't know. Maybe that's what he says. That's how he feels. He says, "The way they don't dance like they would in a period movie, with every movement tailored like it's 1867. Gerwig took the challenge of making them dance differently and have fun and be excited like kids nowadays would dance if they were 15 or 13. I'll question that a little bit, because I don't think they're dancing to this music.
Yeah.
We're kind of in like this in between space where it's closer to the period, but it's not quite there.
Yeah.
But it's too far from. You don't go to a dance club today to dance to, string orchestra playing a minuet. No, that's not happening. Anyway, so he finishes. There's a youth about Mozart because we know Mozart was a child all his life. Okay, but that's an interesting thought. And then he says, and for Bowie, there's something extravagant about him that we see in their characters. They want to be different. They all want to be artists.
They're very broad statements.
Yes, broad statements. Like I said, I'm not sure I agree with most of what he says, even as it relates to the film itself. But I guess that shows us some of what he's thinking when he writes this score. So interesting. And there's a lot of critical writing on this, and there's one quote in particular. I think it's my last quote. Some critic named Carolyn Goddard. I don't know who she is, but she says, I think this is an interesting kind of segue into looking at the music itself. She says, Desplat's work is well-paced, balanced, and metronomic. It is equally reliant upon the strings, keyboard, and wind instruments, and the songs drip into one another, causing the entire work to attain a sort of hypnotic sameness. Despite this, each song manages to illustrate an individual thought or emotion that corresponds to a given point in the film. Okay, well, that's really interesting to me, too. To me, it seems like everybody's thinking about this film and this score in a very different way than I do. Hypnotic sameness. That's a really, to me, that's, in some sense, the color palette never varies. But I wouldn't say that it has a hypnotic sameness at all. Nor would I say it's equally reliant upon the strings, keyboard, and wind instruments. So let's get into a little bit. We get into the music itself and why I like it. So it's in general a really small ensemble. I think apparently the largest number of musicians is, I think, just for the last minute of the film, and he had a total of 40 musicians playing there. But for most of the film, apparently he originally wanted just to write it for string quartet, then add like winds and piano and percussion and harp, which is pretty much the exact orchestration that I'm playing on this young composer's 2 short films on Saturday, which is partially also why I thought it sounded like this score. When also because his harmonies are very similar as well, but then he decided that, it would create more life, more vibrancy if he increased the number of strings. But it's still a really small ensemble. It's, kind of a small string group. And then he occasionally will add flute and clarinet. Flute also doubling on alto flute. He has, I think, 2 keyboard players, mostly playing piano or celeste, and a harpist. And I guess 1 percussionist who occasionally does, like, I think a little bit of snare drum and triangle.
Yeah.
So a really small group of musicians. Also apparently recorded in New York, which is pretty unusual because very little film scoring is recorded in New York, especially for big films. But kind of, again, smaller ensemble, so maybe that's why it worked in New York. Okay, so to me, what I noticed about this score, in part because of this kind of smaller ensemble, also some of the choices he makes, it's a very transparent sound, meaning that the way we talk about musicians talk about transparent versus opaque. Transparent means that I can hear every detail in all the instruments, and nothing overwhelms anything else, and nothing is lost. And some of that you can play around with, like the hall you're recording in or how you record it, but mostly that's coming from the way you're scoring it. How many people you have on a certain part, how balanced it is, and whether you want that effect. Right. And he clearly does. He wants you to hear every single part. And that transparency goes kind of hand in hand with this lightness. Now, some of it's like the rhythmic feel of it. It's very bouncy, very dance-like, although kind of in the world of because it's kind of in between, right? We have this sense of like we're dancing a minuet or a gavotte, like, you know, some old dance, but some of the speeds are a little bit too fast, and, you know, has the kind of motoric drive to it that wouldn't have been characteristic of music from that time. And some of that, so he does some interesting things too. So he basically, a lot of times it's the strings that are doing the motoric rhythmic kind of stuff, you know, like repeated arpeggios. And oftentimes in this kind of ensemble, you think it would be the harp and the piano doing that, not the strings. But mostly, a lot of times he's relegating the strings to this kind of background support. With then he'll have the, you know, depending on whether he has the winds or not. If he doesn't have the winds, it'll be the harp and keyboard or celeste, you know, piano or celeste, kind of carrying the melodic stuff. Or he'll have one motoric idea in the strings and another one in either the harp or the piano, with the other one doing the melodic stuff. So I think that's a kind of interesting choice. That it's a little more weight on the motoric rhythmic stuff, and a little bit more lightness on the melodic stuff. Now, I will qualify this by saying that, you know, this is a very melodic score, very much in contrast to probably every other film that was on the Oscar nominated list that year, where this is a score where melody is the most important thing. There are a couple of really important melodies that go throughout this score, and, you know, are transformed as appropriate for the characters, and it's really the melody that's kind of driving this. Anyway, we get this kind of light melody with not terribly weighty because of how small the string ensemble is, kind of background, and that also creates a kind of interesting color, I think, too, because we have kind of these, you know, kind of brightness and brittleness with the keyboards and harp playing melodies, especially when they have like a triangle doing hits in the background too. Very kind of sparkly melodic stuff. This is not like a, you know, passionate, intense melodic stuff. It's kind of bright, sparkly melodies. The flute and clarinet are not used a ton in this score, but when they are, they come in at very particular character moments, and they add a lot of like the warmth and the depth to this score. They're always together. Flute, they're not playing the same line, but when one is present, the other is also present. The flute and clarinet. And to me, I think they're mostly coming in like the most emotional and like internal moments. When you have more external, like, you know, two characters who are in love are happily dancing together, they're not present. But when we have, like, you know, I'm facing death, or the fact that my sister is marrying the man that I am desperately in love with, and like I'm just going to sit there and kind of stare at them as they are like happily kissing each other, that's when we get like the flute and clarinet. There's kind of warmth and you know, to the sound, and this kind of emotional depth. They're always kind of melodic instruments in this score. So they kind of add, I think depth is just the best word, you know, in contrast to like when the piano and harp are playing melodies. There are also some really interesting moments where the harp and the keyboards do some polyrhythmic stuff. And now polyrhythmic, which is where we have like two meters against each other at the same time, pretty common in, you know, modern music and film scores, of course. But the way it's so, because it's so transparent, you can't avoid it. When it's like you just have the strings kind of lightly doing their motoric stuff very quietly in the background, and we have a like two pattern, like basically eighth notes in the harp, it's kind of at the forefront, along with at the forefront, you know, simultaneously at the forefront, triplets in the piano. So we have three versus two. And because it's such a transparent texture, such a light texture, because there's so few instruments, this is like the prominent thing, this 3 against 2 in kind of instruments with similar-ish timbre, it is kind of unsettling. Like, not in like a horror movie kind of way at all, but like you really feel like this, kind of off kilter, like 3 versus 2. And I'll be honest, I have to rewatch the film to remember exactly like what happens when that occurs in the score. But my guess is that it's done to a very particular effect for when like something kind of upsetting is happening, but like not full on like, I need to bring in the flute and clarinet for like greater emotional depth. It's kind of like, it feels to me more like an onset of something upsetting internally. So I think that's a really cool choice as well. So in general, we have a lot of restraint. I know, as I've used the word lightness a lot, Greta Gerwig calls it, again, quote, deceptive lightness, I guess, meaning that it has that emotional weight to it, but still is kind of, light on the surface.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the best way to kind of describe this music. I mean, you could just turn it on and it would sound nice in the background of whatever you're doing. But if you listen to it carefully, you can tell that there is a lot of really conscious emotional depth. And that, I think, as Desplat said, he is trying to follow the characters and not action. So a couple of tracks that I would particularly point people towards. I clicked on the wrong thing there. So the title track was apparently the first thing he wrote. It's I think the main character, her name is Joe. I think I could be wrong. Little Women fans don't get mad at me.
Is it really that big of a fandom around?
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, I know some. I know some people who were pretty. Well, my mother was very invested in it. I remember I had a long conversation with our friend from back at undergraduate film stuff, Kelsey, about this. She's also a big fan of Little Women. So I think some people are pretty devoted to it. Yes, yeah. She and I had a long discussion about this film after I watched it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had no idea. I had no idea.
And my feeling is that she would not be angry, but she would let me know if I got the wrong character there. So. So I think it's Joe, but just I'm not an expert on this. She's like running through the streets of New York excitedly, hoping to I think see her first like book or like poem in print or something like that. And so that's the first thing he wrote. And apparently, again, he originally wrote it for string quartet and said, you know what, I'll have a little bit more kind of sonic depth if I have a few more strings than just 4, expand the section, but not keep it too large. So the title track, Little Women, I strongly recommend that. It will give you everything that I just talked about, all those characteristics right there in 3 minutes. Yeah, it's kind of the key to like all the music that comes after it. Personally, I'm a big fan as well of the tracks. Oh gosh, what is it called? Ice skating. Ice skating has some really interesting kind of flute and clarinet writing in it. If you read the interview with Gerwig and Desplat, they talk a lot about the music for the scenes at the beach and how it's the same melody, but stuff changes as the years go by when they visit the beach. So I listen to all the tracks related to the beach visits. And be glad that you are not on Crane Beach while these bugs are biting you and you have blood pouring down your leg. Yes, it is not pleasant.
Yikes.
And one of the big tracks and kind of big emotional moments in the film, the track on the soundtrack is called Meg's Dress. I really can't remember all the details of exactly what happens in the scene, although I know it's kind of climactic in a way. I think it's kind of a big climax in the novel as well, like the end of like one of the main sections of the book. Or I think the book was like originally in 3 volumes, and it's like the end of like the 2nd volume. This scene. So I'm not gonna just try and remember all the details of it. But certainly like emotional climax. Meg's Dress. One of those where you really do feel like there's a lot of emotional weight to it, despite the fact that it is not a heavy score at all. Right. And then from the end of the film, again, kind of the climax is from the end. The track Dr. March's Daughters, really beautiful. I think the highlight of the score. So many really interesting harmonic things that Desplat does there, and it's really he has like alternating a flute and clarinet playing the melody along with the piano, or the piano is playing it like in harmonized version of the melody. And it's this really beautiful melody with a lot of major 7th chords and really interesting modulations in it. Absolutely gorgeous. 4 or 5 minute track. If nothing else, you want to listen to that track. And then the last like track on the soundtrack album from the very end of the film, I think it's about where he has the largest number of musicians. I think he brings in French horns too for just this. The last minute, it's called "It's Romance" on the soundtrack album. He finally kind of like, well, I'll go a little bit Hollywood and have like our main melody, but like in multiple Hollywood octave doublings and triplings. Kind of the music takes over in the last like 60 seconds of the film. It kind of breaks a little bit with the rest of the music, and despite using the same melody, it kind of breaks a little bit with the kind of lightness which is gone with the rest of the film. But still, if you like your good old Hollywood, string octave triplings, nice like 60-80 seconds of music. So yeah, I think it's a really great film to listen, or score to listen to. If you're interested in how to get like real emotional depth with subtlety, like it's not gonna scream out at you. Like you could put, like I said, you could put the music on in the background, and it'll just be this pleasant sounding thing in the background of whatever you're doing. It's not gonna hit you over the head with what he's doing emotionally, but so it's very subtle, but it clearly has that weight if you are listening to it. So emotional weight and depth, despite the lightness of the sound. If you want to, think about how to write for a really small ensemble, write very transparently, but still have great results, definitely listen to this score. It shows that it is very possible to write a very melodic score even in 2019, and for it to be really effective, and also that you can write a really melodic score without needing a gigantic orchestra. You don't have to be Korngold or Steiner or John Williams, having 4 times as many musicians in the recording studio in order to get this beautiful melodic sound that can carry a film. So yeah, I very strongly recommend listening to it for any film composer, and also I think if you're talked about this before too, if you're a director, I think it's a good film score to listen to, good film to watch. I think just see how the music interacts with with the character movements, not the action, and can you get away with a kind of smaller ensemble and be melodic and still be effective in your score?
Yeah. Very cool. Now, kind of tangential question, but because this is Greta Gerwig, did you feel, because we talked about this in a prior podcast about how Lady Bird, how Lady Bird is like one of the most, or one of the first, or actually the first, and very obvious kind of like postmodern. That's the thing I was talking about a lot. What did you think about Little Women in terms of that sort of thing? Almost like coming out of a postmodern way of filmmaking and into sort of like a new, but somewhat commenting on, maybe even unawares on the prior era.
So I guess what I understand is this film has some controversy amongst fans of Little Women, because it ends with our main character questioning. It's like it doesn't end with her like getting married, as I think as happens in the novel itself. Where she's like, it's almost like she has two timelines in her head. She's like imagining, well, wait, like it's kind of ambiguous. Like, is she imagining what would happen if she did get married, or is she like, actually, I'm going to be the writer and I'm going to write this story and I'm writing the actual novel itself, and I'll make myself get married in the novel, but I'll be happy with just being a writer.
Right.
So it has that kind of ambiguity that the actual novel doesn't have. And I suspect in some ways, I think Gerwig says somewhere that she she chose it because I think she identifies primarily with our main character, Jo, I think is her name. Again, could be wrong. I think her name is Jo. I would guess then that this is kind of something, it reflects some ambiguity in her own life of like, art versus like family, and does one have to sacrifice one for the other?
Classic.
Right. Kind of inserted at the last second of the film. It doesn't seem like it's leading up to that until it happens. So I don't know. It seems to me maybe like in terms of postmodernism, like in a lot of ways it feels like it's trying to return to a simpler kind of filmmaking. She talks, I think, a lot of somewhere in this about some particular films. I'll see if I can find it later, from the 30s and 40s that she was really interested in imitating. And I think it does. It has that like sense of something older and simpler, from that era.
Does it feel like it yearns for that, like an older and simpler sort of?
Maybe I feel maybe not like yearning like a full return of it. Maybe that's like where she asked for Mozart and David Bowie, like something that is like that, but in our own time.
Yeah.
And that the main character is also in some ways right with this ambiguity of what is actually truth and what is her own novel that she's writing in kind of the end frame. Maybe that's also part of it. It's like, well, we want this kind of ultimately happy family experience, but we also want to be artists, and we don't want, we can't quite have the same neatly, like we're all married at the end, and we can all finally live happily ever after we've resolved all of our differences between our spouses, that maybe we could have anticipated in the 1860s and 70s when the novel was written, something like that, but not quite that. We can't quite attain that,
Yeah. Very interesting. I have a huge hunch, and I'll put my thought out there, and I'll say I'm right later if I am right.
Okay.
Which is that the upcoming Barbie movie that she's making is going to be.
She's doing that? I did not know that.
Yes. I think it will be completely different than what people think it might be. I don't know what it'll be, but I think it will be. I think thematically will be very surprising to a lot of people.
I think, I have to imagine from having seen Lady Bird and this, that if Greta Gerwig is doing a Barbie film, I'm sure there's some corporate stuff that's going to, make it like it's got to appeal to like the younger like 5-year-old 6-year-old girl crowd so they can buy Barbies. But
actually, I don't know because I think it's like PG-13. Let me see.
really,
Let's see here. It probably doesn't have a rating yet, but from what I saw in the ad, it didn't look like something that you could show kids per se. Or
okay,
it was oddly like maybe I'm wrong about this, but it felt like more like it was setting itself up to be a social commentary, which is really strange that Barbie as like an IP would allow that to happen. But
yeah,
someone convinced someone, but that's what it felt like, and maybe this is sort of like a brand move to like sort of add some complexity to the Barbie universe or something like that. I don't really know, but
interesting.
yeah, I think the ad presents the movie in a way that it probably is thematically way more complex than what the ad sort of gives off, if that makes sense. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Well, my parting thought, this may be a bit unexpected, but I have not seen the film. I've never seen any Barbie film, but I have seen one scene from this film, and I played the score for it. The I don't know what year it's from. This Barbie film called Barbie as the Island Princess.
Pretty straightforward name.
Yes, actually has some really good music in it.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember what the name of a song is. Oh gosh, I played it here at school last year, and it has a really cool flute part in it. Good song. Now the lyrics are kind of dependent on the scene. Worst animation I've ever seen. You can look it up online. But the music is actually pretty good. So
nice.
You go.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to say was the score for Little Women has quite a bit of listens, it looks like.
For looking at Spotify or
I'm looking at YouTube.
Okay.
But quite a few listens for a modern score, I don't know what the word is, for a score from the last like 5 years in particular.
Yeah.
It has quite a bit of views, especially something that's not done by like, John Williams or Hans Zimmer.
Yeah. It's a fantastic score.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, you want to close out your segment?
Yeah, well, thank you for watching Mixed Media Music. If you're watching live, definitely stick around for another like 30 seconds to watch Mixed Media Movies. But if you cannot do that, or if you are watching in post, again, thanks for watching, listening to Mixed Media Music. Make sure you give us a like or a thumbs up or whatever the equivalent is on whatever platform you are watching or listening to us on. Check us out. All of our links to our Discord, our locals page, places where those are places where we keep this discussion about art going all week. You can find links to that down there in the corner. And yeah, again, special shout out to our supporters on locals: Rob Sharma, 999 Crime, Post, and K Kairos.
Yes, absolutely. All right, and here we go.
Mixed Media Movies.
And welcome back to Mixed Media. This is our little movie segment where we'll be talking about, let me change the card here, mystery movies. So this is a very random topic that came to mind, prompted by a specific thing. I'll get into it. But first, before we move on to that, if you are not familiar with Mixed Media or just tuning in, or you're listening in post where we cut these up, Mixed Media is a live podcast that happens every Monday at 7:30 p.m., and we usually have three of us hosts sort of talking about our favorite topics from our different perspectives. So, let's introduce ourselves. So my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella based out of Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania.
Hi, I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and media composer living in Los Angeles.
Yes, and usually we have a third with us, Nathan, who usually talks about video games, but he's out today. So it's just the two of us. But it's still going to be fun. And I want to hear your thoughts as we go along on mystery movies. If you find them, if you like them at all, if you don't like them, what you like about them. And especially the topic for today is how mystery movies compared to mystery novels. Very specific topic, but prompted by a podcast I was listening to, which was done by the Thomistic Institute. So, if you're unfamiliar, the Thomistic Institute is a podcast done by, the Dominican Order in the Catholic Church, and they talk about a whole bunch of random stuff. And they decided to do an episode on mystery novels, and I was just like, I'm a big G.K. Chesterton fan as a writer. I don't have the book in arm's. I usually have something G.K. Chesterton within arm's reach that I'm leafing through. It's on my shelf right now. But I'm a huge G.K. Chesterton fan, probably because I identify with him a lot. Scatterbrained, crazy person. I hit play on the episode because what I was expecting was them to talk about G.K. Chesterton as the obvious, because he has the Father Brown series of novels, which at the time were like, YA novel popularity of its own time. And they did mention that, so I was right, and that was good. But they started talking about movies, which surprised me. And comparing and contrasting mystery novels to mystery movies. Now, Ben, do you have a preference off the top of your head, or do you care about mystery at all, or...
It's not my favorite genre, nor is it a genre I know much about. I've read some like Sherlock Holmes and what's the name of Poe's guy? Edgar Allan Poe.
Gosh, I forget. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah,
like the Gold Bug and Mystery or something like that, and the Murders in Rue Morgue.
Yes.
I can't think what the guy's name is. But other than that, I don't know too much about mysteries. There's actually a really fascinating article too, a little while ago by a really prominent music theorist who it's called like 3 ways to read a mystery or to listen to a piece of music. Very fascinating. He goes into a lot of depth about a particular Sherlock Holmes story. And actually one of the most interesting bits of music theory writing that I've ever read. In terms of movies, I really can't say I know too many. Really, the only things I can think of off the top of my head are like the Knives Out and Glass Onion recently.
Yes. Actually, those are good examples. I forgot about Knives Out. I should mention that later. But yeah, for me, I haven't read that many mystery novels. I've watched way more mystery movies. Not particularly because I'm seeking them out, but just happen to have watched many mystery movies. But I've read some Sherlock Holmes. I don't even remember, because I think I tried to read it when I was too young, if that makes sense. And I'm trying to think of other mysteries. There are other novels with mysteries in them, but I haven't read the Father Brown series itself, although that's definitely on my reading list. As G.K. Chesterton is awesome. But yeah, so their thoughts basically were that mystery novels were, one particular person, and they were kind of going back and forth about it, but that mystery novels are a superior way to present mysteries, right? And the idea here is that in novel form, mystery novels do a few things. So one, you can sort of solve alongside. You can try to solve the mystery alongside the novel in a way that's a lot more conducive. Think about the idea that with a book, you can put the book down, and sort of like lie down and think about it, right? And it's not really interrupting the medium, right? Like books are kind of meant to tolerate picking them up and putting them down, right? Um, and they also were talking about how sort of novels, because of that fact, they encourage people to have a more curious mindset in the right ways. So instead of the sort of idea that you are surprised by the complexity of a story kind of lets you realize how complex life could be, right? So you can sort of learn how to have curiosity, how to be investigatory through reading a mystery novel, and then sort of like view life in a different lens because of it, right? It was a very unserious but fun talk. But if you know the Dominicans, it gets very like gets probably it gets more philosophical than anything we typically talk about on the podcast. It's still very good. Would recommend. But I had a lot of thoughts while this was happening, while they were trashing on movies, which is the thing that I do, and saying how they sort of distract you and are more concerned with the twist, right, than allowing you to sort of evolve along with the story. And I sat there and I was just like, that can't be right. That can't be right, simply because the way that you do this is through writing, right? So like the way you inculcate or encourage people to sort of live or evolve along with a story is through your writing, primarily, right? And you do this a lot with other genres, particularly character dramas, right? You sort of like grow along with and evolve with the characters in a character drama quite naturally and quite easily. But then I was trying to think of examples of mystery movies that do this, and that's when I started having issues. And that's when I started understanding where the critique is coming from. Because the first examples you might think of are things like Stranger Things, right? Which kind of has a mystery flair to it. That's a TV show. But same thing sort of applies to TV. You can think of The Prestige by Christopher Nolan. You can think of the Sherlock Holmes iterations. There's a billion of them. But the two iterations I've seen, the one with Robert Downey Jr. and the one with Benedict Cumberbatch, the show, those two iterations, they've kind of got the same writing, the same core mystery writing style. I don't actually know, like I said, because I haven't really read the novels. I don't know if it matches or not. But they're not too terribly different from each other in the sense of what they're trying to get the audience to do while watching these things. And so I wanted to take a look at these examples, take a look at some other examples that came to mind a lot later, and I want to see how we can sort of pick apart what the actual differences are between the two mediums when it comes to mystery. So, that's the goal. Should be fun.
So I just want to say, so I did find the article that I mentioned a few minutes ago. It's by Edward T. Cohn, somewhat famous music theorist. It's called 3 Ways of Reading a Detective Story or a Brahms Intermezzo.
Wow.
I think my impression too, based on what you said so far, is that he would agree that I think he would disagree with the Dominicans and side with you about films being a good way to present a mystery story. Yeah.
And so when you look at these examples, so like if you take like Stranger Things, for example, which is kind of what this episode artwork is based off. It's the mixture of 2 movies. Can you guess the other movie in the chat, or you, Ben, that it's a mixture of? It's very kind of niche.
No. It kind of looks like Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock Holmes.
No,
but I don't know.
No, and it's not Benedict Cumberbatch, but I actually can definitely see how you get that from looking at it. It's someone else, and it's a different movie. And if you can guess it in the chat, I don't know, you get brownie points or something. But Stranger Things, the interesting thing about it is that it's trying to mash a bunch of genres together. And past season 1, I'm not really a Stranger Things fan. I think season 1 is one of the best seasons in television history, if not the best. I really like the hell out of it. After season 1, it quickly just like it becomes bad. Like not even like good, just it becomes bad. Which is very sad.
Well, I think part of it is, they couldn't really repeat what they did in the first season. They're trying to, but also trying to do something different. And not that I've only seen the first season. I've never really had any interest in watching the others. I've heard about what.
Yeah, they're very repetitive, and they waited too long in between seasons to film them, and which forced them into certain story arcs. It's just a mess, and that's an episode for another day. And I haven't watched the latest season, and I probably never will. Waste of time. But the interesting thing about Stranger Things is that it's trying to put together a bunch of genres, right? So it's kind of... And those genres are all trying to evoke some sort of, like, retroism, right? So, it's trying to invoke, like, the Goonies and, like, Ghostbusters and, like, stuff like that. It's trying to evoke a lot of things stylistically. And one of those things that's really... core to like sort of like an 80s and 90s blockbuster sort of vibe is mystery, which was way more popular of a genre at that time than it is now in the cinema, at least. And that sort of genre, sort of that sort of genre mimicking, all it's trying to do, it's not really... So I see basically that Stranger Things always has like mystery as a genre listed. And I guess that kind of makes sense. There is a mystery, but the point isn't really the idea of an unknown, right? The point is really, probably at the core, it's characters, right? So, we're really concerned with how these characters are growing up. We're really concerned with how these characters relate to each other and what happens to them. But is anyone like, wow, it's a Demogorgon? Like, you know what I mean? Like, wow, that's what it turned out to be. Is that really the central point of the whole thing? Not really. It's kind of just got this veneer of the genre of mystery more than it is sort of like, more mystery oriented, like something like Sherlock Holmes would be. Then we've got The Prestige, and we'll come back to Nolan later, hint, hint. And one of his biggest mystery, so he has a few mystery films. He's got, I think, 3, if my count is correct. One is The Prestige. One is the one that inspires the crossover in the episode artwork, and the other one is called Insomnia, which is a straight up detective film. But I'm going to pull the Prestige because it's the most known probably out of the 3. And The Prestige is interesting because there's so much mystique and mystery around what even the idea of the film is. I mean, we're told that in classic Nolan fashion, we're told at the beginning of the film what the whole film is about, right? That he always does this every single film. If you don't know the Nolanism by now, just go watch the first scene of any film, and it's either visual or it's the whole scene. Basically tells you what the entire movie will be. And I kind of like that. It's kind of cool. And in The Prestige, we get one of the opening scenes, or in the opening scene, we get Alfred, who is not Alfred in this movie. Forget his name, the actor's name, famous actor. We get him explaining what the word prestige means in magic, right? So he's explaining, like, first there's the turn, there's the blah blah blah. I don't fully remember, but there's these steps in magic, and it ends with the prestige, which is the idea that you bring something back, right? Which is the hint for the entire movie, right? Nolan is basically telling you this movie will take this exact form. It will take the form of the reveal, the turn, whatever it is, and you can map out the acts that way. They line up just right, and then at the end you get the prestige, right? Which is something coming back that you didn't think could come back, right? In the classic stage magician sort of example, which is sort of played out multiple times in the movie in sort of a genius, intricate way. One of his best pieces of writing from his brother, Jonathan Nolan. is, a bird gets squashed in a cage, and looks like it died because how could the bird have gotten out in time? But then he pulls out a bird from his pocket, and it's the bird. And the kid in the middle of the movie, ominously, if you understand how Nolan writes, says that, well, the other one died. This one's not even real, or this is not the same bird, because the kid intuits that the magic trick actually did kill the bird. But anyway, that's the whole aside. The whole point I'm trying to make, though, in terms of the mystery of the Prestige, is that the concern, again, is not with you solving alongside the movie what the movie is about. It's more like Nolan doing a literal magic trick on you, which is all about distraction. All about distraction, right? Like, when a magician is doing sleight of hand, it's all about distraction. And a lot of mystery movies function essentially like a magic trick, where there's a lot going on in a very fast clip, and they are not letting you have the time in the room to really have your own separated thoughts about what is going on from the characters. So in the example of The Prestige, we're always living through Hugh Jackman's character or Christian Bale's character. And the drama of their lives plays out in such a way that it's always distracting us from the subtle weirdnesses that are happening in the film. And when the plot twists come, and there's multiple of them, when the plot twists come, they come as the reveal of a magic trick, right? They come suddenly and they mesmerize you, and you're like, how does that make any sense, right? You get that sort of magic trick feeling, and then we get the Prestige at the end, which also is sort of a Christopher Nolan showing you how he's distracted you this whole time. There's literally a montage in there of him going back through the film and revisiting certain moments that you probably missed some subtleties to. And I think a lot of mystery movies kind of are like that. Another example would be literally Sherlock Holmes movies, where a lot of times we're going so fast in the pace. I find this particularly true in the Benedict Cumberbatch version, although they're both really fast-paced. But the Benedict Cumberbatch version, even though it's a show and there's a lot of time, they're covering so much plot ground all the time that there's no room except in between episodes, which is interesting for a TV show. There's no time for you to think in the episode itself. But there is actually time for you to put the show down, right, so to speak, when an episode finishes. And that's kind of an interesting way that sort of makes up for its super fast pace. But still, you get the feeling whenever you get those plot twists that the whole idea is to do more of a magic trick on you. It's to sort of distract you until we get to that twist. Instead of invite you into the mystery itself to think alongside the show. I don't know anything about the books. If that's Ben, is that true of the books too, or
no, I don't think. And granted, I haven't read Sherlock Holmes in a long time. And much more recently, I've read that article I mentioned, which talks about how he thinks Sherlock Holmes Sir Arthur Conan Doyle intends for them to be read. I think you're supposed to kind of be thinking like you're trying to solve along with Sherlock Holmes, but you can't. But you're supposed to be surprised. Then the Cohen's point then is that so you have to read it again. So then you go back and you I see all of these details, but that's still not the ideal way to read it. Though this is the ideal way to read it is the third reading, where now you know all of the details, but you can also try and suspend your knowledge of the details and recapture both the surprise, but also the sense of understanding how it all fits together.
That's very interesting. That's very, very interesting.
Yes. And then he says that's how you have to. He says that basically that's how you want to analyze music as well.
Okay. Yeah. I would say a lot of these films, like The Prestige, on rewatch, the second time you watch it, it is basically you just drinking up all the extra details, even the ones he doesn't like. I mean, he doesn't revisit a lot of the details at the end. There's a lot of little moments, little good moments in the edit, especially where there's just a little the something's just held for just a little bit longer. And if you're really not intent on noticing such things, which almost nobody is going to why did they linger on that shot for like 12 frames more than the pace sort of dictated for the last 5 minutes of this movie. You know, you're not gonna get them. The third time, though, I actually would say that something like The Prestige kind of gets more academic to watch. Like it's like you're watching it. At least maybe that's just a me thing, which could be. But you're watching it and you're kind of like, how does this work? Like, how does this film? How did you trick me the first time? How does the second time feel so good and enlightening? How are you fitting all these things together? And maybe you're watching it with someone else, which could be really fun because you kind of experience the surprise alongside, your friends and stuff like this, and kind of get to chat and talk about it afterwards. But I kind of understand why the person you're referencing is saying that about the third watch of something that's written and not something like the films that we've mentioned so far, which to me are, now that I've thought about it, are more like magic tricks than they are like a mystery novel, right? The last example is interesting. It's Martin Scorsese, one of my favorite films of all time. Martin Scorsese's Shutter Island. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing? Have you seen it?
I have not. Although my friend out here, who is very active on Letterboxd, she really loves it.
It is literally one of the best movies. I had that conclusion on second watch. Like the first watch I had it, I was like, damn, that was really good. The second watch, I was like, what the heck did this guy make? I thought it was one of the most, I still do, think it's one of the most brilliantly written movies, and brilliantly everything movie, frankly. Leonardo DiCaprio's acting is phenomenal, especially in light of the twist and all this kind of stuff. And I won't spoil it. But if you haven't seen it, 100% see it. But the interesting thing about Shutter Island is it's actually more like the thing that you just said, in that the third time you kind of experience it, because I've watched it actually exactly 3 times. You kind of experience it in both ways, because you're kind of relieved. The first time you watch it not knowing what's going to happen. The second time you watch it with this preoccupation with looking for all the things. And the third time you're free to experience the artwork as like a combination, like you're just kind of, you're done with the preoccupation, but it's still so good. Shutter Island, though, I would still say somewhat is like a magic trick in some senses, but it's kind of interesting. So Shutter Island has way more space in it. The pacing of the movie is way slower than something like Sherlock Holmes, right? You have a lot more room to breathe, but it's very engrossing. Very engrossing. It's one of the Scorsese's best traits that he has, is from frame one. I don't know how to describe this feeling other than saying you feel like you're in good hands. Like you feel like you just want to just drop into the frame of the movie and disappear for the rest of the film. It's a combination of a lot of things, but it's a talent. And the first frames of Shutter Island are in the mirror Leonardo DiCaprio's character is looking in the mirror and he's looking at himself, and we kind of transition to this angle of taking the place of him, which literally invites you to sort of identify with him and live this journey with his character throughout, right? And that invitation ends up being kind of a distraction in a lot of ways to trying to solve along this mystery. And I think if you were trying to solve along this mystery with our main character, who is a detective at the beginning of the movie, you would not get, it would not be a good experience, So that sort of engrossing thing is very good. But why is it that on the third try, right, it's less academic and more like you get to enjoy it for what it is? I think it's because we have 2 stories interwoven, basically. And I'm going to say this without spoiling it. But we have the story that he wrote for the first-time viewer and the story he wrote for the second-time viewer. and they're completely different. This is why I think it's one of the best movies ever made. The second time you watch that movie, it doesn't just change what is happening for you, the plot, right? It changes the theme of the movie entirely. The second watch of the movie is about completely different things than the first watch, which I think is the absolute genius of that film. I've never seen anything like that, where the thematic point of the film entirely changes the second time you watch it. It's incredible. But that third viewing, you get to watch the weaving, if that makes sense. You get to watch the whole dance work together, and you get to kind of think about it in two brains. You know, what the one theme is sort of presenting to you, and what the other theme is sort of presenting to you, and it's a beautiful thing. But it's still kind of like a magic trick, still relying on distraction. So, is it true? Is it true that films rely more on sort of that distraction technique than novels do, and novels are inherently better for that sort of thinking along thing? Last chance, because I'm about to tell you the answer, of the movie that I think kind of separates separates itself as an example that I've seen, at least, and that I could think of a movie that kind of departs from the other examples I've given, and that's the crossover in the image down there. Okay, it's not gonna happen. But the film down there is a Nolan film called Memento, and it's his first studio level feature production. It's the first time he was given a real budget. So it's obviously a lot less known of a film, but still a very iconic film, especially if you're a Nolan fan. And this film is very complex. It takes a lot of Nolanisms and really puts them at the forefront in terms of the I guess playing around with one central idea for the whole runtime, basically. But this film is kind of genre-like, doesn't really feel as much like a mystery movie in like sort of like the tropes of the genre of mystery movies. It doesn't feel like Sherlock Holmes. It doesn't feel like we're being led from twist to twist to twist to twist, right? Instead, we are left with experiencing this movie in a complete state of ununderstanding for the entire runtime, on purpose, until the end. You are given some central core pieces of information at the beginning, which may or may not be reliable, and you are watching events unfold day after day in this character's life, without terribly much of a clue as to why anything is particularly happening. And this level of, I suppose, disorientation is so much so that it's not engrossing as it is, as it sort of asks you for the whole time to think about why things are happening, if that makes sense. It's so unimmersive in a way, that you don't ever feel like you're not watching a movie, or that you're in the movie, or you're identifying even with the character, because the character is so blank. He doesn't even have a last name, right? Like, he's so hard to understand, throughout the entire runtime of the movie, that you're not really, you're not stuck in the immersion of the film, but instead you're kind of scratching your head the whole time and wondering what the heck is going on. And I can't spoil the ending because it's too good, so you have to go watch it. It's a great film. But why does it still work? And that was one of the interesting questions. Like, why did I actually watch the whole runtime if I was confused the whole time? You understand? Like it's an hour and a half movie, or hour and 45 minutes, or whatever it is. Why on earth would I sit through an hour and 45 minutes of I have no idea what the heck is going on if I don't know what the heck is going on? And the reason why I think, and the way it's written is very intelligent and very emotionally intelligent, is that it implicates a lot of important things in life, thereby creating a second story that is easy to understand and that you want to understand the more mysterious aspects of it, right? So, I mean, if you don't know the core premise, our main character, he has forget what the disorder is called, but basically, he has no long-term memories. He basically forgets what happened to him the day before. He is like basically a 24-hour memory, or something like that. I haven't seen the film in a while. And so he lives every day as if it's a new day, and he doesn't remember what he did the day prior, right? So he has all these tattoos on his bodies as like reminders and stuff like this, if that makes sense. But we're given a core premise tattooed on his body that someone raped his wife. And the reason that's the core idea that's tattooed onto his body, from a writing perspective, is that idea is so strong, it's so understandable, it's so universal. The desire for vengeance that comes out of this character, we want to see it through. We want to see what the heck this is about. And we see him live his daily life because he remembers. Like, he remembers everything before the rape. I can't remember exactly why. But he remembers, like, a certain history. But he, like, every day he wakes up and finds out that his wife is dead, basically. Which is so emotionally compelling, right? That, that you want to see through this character. You feel like, you know, like he's your child almost. Like you, like, you know, like you want to make sure he ends up okay at the end. You know, because it's just a disturbing reality to wake up every morning with a tattoo on your neck that says, "My wife was raped and killed," you know, by so and so, and all these other tattoos on his body about little reminders and events in history, because he knows that he'll forget, you know, the next day. And it's like there's a tattoo that explains to him that he has short-term memory or long-term memory problems and stuff like this. And that is so compelling and engaging of a concept that we want to watch the whole thing while also wondering what the heck is going on. And this is the first example that came to my head as to a film that I was thinking, and I think most people do when they watch it, less in the universe of the film and more in my own head trying to solve it, right? Solve the mystery. And I think that kind of answers the question as to why Shutter Island is so successful on third watch, because you could watch Memento over and over and over again, I think. And it's because they have this interesting idea that we can interweave two stories, right? We can have, in the case of Memento, it's really one simple big arc, but there's really a really complex, you know, underlying real story that's going on. In the case of Shutter Island, they're two completely thematically different stories interwoven together. In the case of Sherlock Holmes, that's not happening. It's not two stories, right? And so that was my thought after some contemplation was, one of the ways I might try to maximize this sort of feeling that you get from a novel when sort of importing it into the film world, or, you know, whatever, translating it to the film world, is one thing that might really help is that you have to engage the audience maximally for the whole runtime, unlike with a book where someone can put it down when they're tired. You have a different set of constraints. People are spending money to put themselves in a seat in a theater. It's a much different kind of experience all around. How do I make sure that they're engaged the whole time? How do I make sure it has rewatch value? And how do I make sure the mystery feels engaging, like I want to solve it alongside the whole thing? It's one of those things might be to have more than one story going on at once, effectively, from the writing perspective. And that was what I came to. Last 2 points. I think a lot of the a lot of this success will have to come from a lot of shock moments, right? So when I was thinking about it, like Memento has a lot of moments where you're kind of like, what? Like, because what it does is it reminds you that you should be thinking about the mystery, right? It kind of kicks you out of like, what the heck just happened? Or Shutter Island has like one or two moments in there that kind of kick you out a little bit of the intense immersion that Scorsese, and you're like, this is a little odd. It makes you feel like something's like there's the scene where this is not really a spoiler, but there's a scene where he walks into a room with this one dude who's supposed to be a government official, and there's some I think it's Mahler playing actually on a record, and it's just such a weird interaction, and you know it's a weird interaction. You're like, why are they interacting in such a way? And why does this guy's expression look not appropriate for this moment? You know? And it sort of kicks you out, and you're like, what the hell is going on? I thought that, you know, I'm vibing with this whole story, and what the heck is this? And there's these few shock moments essentially that prompt you to think about what's going on, instead of sort of being too immersed, which I guess films, in a sense, you're not creating the story in your head as you are in a novel. When you're reading a book, you know, you're sort of you're positively imagining everything. In a movie, you're given everything, and I think audiences tend to just take it, which is good. It's like the suspension of disbelief, right? You just take it all in, and you just kind of surrender yourself to the environment of the movie. The only way you can sort of to undo that thing, which cinema kind of does especially, is to sort of remind people that they're watching a movie and that not everything is going to make sense, right? And I think Scorsese picks only one or two moments to really do that hard in order to keep immersion enough that the next moment doesn't feel like you're rejected out of the whole story, but gives you that quizzical idea of like, what the heck is going on, right? Okay. And the last idea I have about this whole thing, or last two ideas actually, is you could do something completely genre, like different. And you could probably make your own genre out of this if you really wanted to, where it's a lot more hokey, right? Like immersion is just thrown out the window. We're not particularly like cartoony, right? And you kind of sort of like prompt the viewer in a more like direct sense to think about these things, right? You could do this with narration. You could do this with text on the screen. And that probably could work if you did it right. It's just a different genre than what we typically think of when we think of mystery movies, which I think most people think of Sherlock Holmes or something like that. And the last thing that might help if you're trying to do this sort of thing is to have act breaks that are physical. And you could do that if your movie's long enough, especially, is just have like a midpoint where, like, what's it called? The Hateful Eight, I guess the most recent example I can think of, that had a literal, what do you call that? Intermission in the middle of the film, where people are physically ejected out of the out of the film, and and everyone knows that they're going to be talking about what happened, during the first half, in the break between then and the second half. This is an interesting way that specifically the theater medium sort of gives you that opportunity to do. I haven't seen Hateful Eight, unfortunately, but that would be I wouldn't be surprised. Actually, I would be surprised if Tarantino did not think about the intermission as part of the experience of watching the whole film, right? Okay. Final thoughts about novels in particular, because I really was talking about movies this whole time. I think a lot of novels can be kind of in the magic trick realm as well. I think I've read novels that are kind of like that as well, but I think it's much easier to have the option, right, without as much thought, to have the sort of solving along sort of feel to a book. But not all mystery novels, or novels with mysteries, or however you want to put it, are looking to not distract you as well, right? There are red herrings a lot of times. There's immersion sometimes that that even, you know, a sentence stuck in there, I've had this experience with books, you know, a sentence stuck in there, you kind of gloss over it because the whole moment is so big, you know, that one little detail kind of escapes you. And in that, it's sort of doing a magic trick as well, sleight of hand, as it were. So that's my thoughts on mystery novels versus mystery movies. I think you can make... the only example I could think of was Memento, as one that sort of emulates more like what a novel is like. I have not seen a lot of films, so if there's other films that you can think of that fit that sort of thing, because I know there's at least one, almost certainly there's many, many more that I don't know about. But if you can think of a movie that emulates that sort of solving along sort of feeling that a book can give you, or like a character drama sort of gives you, let me know, and I would be happy to know about them. Ben, can you think of one? Or...
What would you say about like Knives Out and Glass Onion?
See, Knives Out, that's why I was happy you brought it up, because it's more cartoonish. And in that sense, is inviting you a lot less into the immersion of the movie than something like Shutter Island.
Solving it, yeah.
Yes,
I think it very much wants you to try and solve it.
Yes, and that I think that might be a good example. And now the more I think about it, I think it is a good example. The question though is, I'm trying to remember the ending of Knives Out. Oh, I vaguely remember.
Won't spoil it.
Yeah.
I think Knives Out is much better than Glass Onion, personally.
Yes, yeah, I've heard. But yeah, if you can think of another movie, I think Knives Out is a good cartoony example of that. Or there's that murder mystery on a train movie that came out like I can't remember what that's called.
Yeah, but isn't the Death of Manal? No, but just Death of Manal is another one. But aren't those Murder on the Orient Express or something like that? Yes.
That's
but aren't those based on novels?
Yeah, they are. Okay, so that's cheating. But I'm sure they're. I guess, you know, in the vein of movies that are sort of feel very movie-like and immersive, but also give you that sort of solving along sort of thing with it. I would like to know more examples of that too, because the only one I could think of was Memento. But and that's supposed to be the main character of Memento, even though it gave him curly hair. I think that kind of throws off the whole thing. I think because that's kind of like the style of hair that a lot of Stranger Things characters have, I guess. I don't know. But you know, that's the main character. He's kind of a kid in the episode artwork, which is kind of funny. Well, that's what I got to say about that. If you disagree, I'm not saying I have no opinion on whether novels are better than movies in this sense. I don't really know. But definitely think that it was oversimplified, the difference between novels and movies on this matter. So definitely let me know what you think in the comments, in the chat, on our Discord, which the link is in the description. Okay, well, that's Mixed Media for today. Oh, were you going to say something?
No.
Okay. That's Mixed Media for today. I'm happy that people were hanging out with us, even though people don't talk. That's okay. We'll get you to talk eventually. But I'm happy that people were watching along. And if you enjoyed this episode, please hit the thumbs up button before you leave. It really does help quite a lot. These shows obviously take a lot of time to do in and themselves, but they also take a lot of time to plan and all this kind of stuff. And if you just hit the like button or share it with someone who might enjoy any of it, it helps quite a ton. And if you join our Discord too, that helps as well. There's a lot of good conversation happening on the Discord. Lots of fun stuff. So definitely go there. The link is in the description. If you're interested in listening to any of our episodes, past or well, not present, that doesn't make sense. Any of our past episodes in podcast form, you can go to mixedmediapodcast.com. There are links to a whole bunch of podcasting platforms. And as always, we're on YouTube, Rumble, and Twitch, so you can enjoy us on any one of those platforms for our live stream that happens every Monday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. So, and finally, shout out to our awesome supporters who support us, make us net neutral. maybe a few dollars positive per month. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe like $2 positive a month, which is 99 Crime, Rob Sharma, Post, yes, and K Kairos. Yes, there you go. It's lovely to have issues remembering all the supporters because we had 0 before. It's sad. Now we have 4. So thank you to all y'all for your help. It's really appreciated. And you can join them if you go to mixedmedia.locals.com. There are perks there. Our Discord's pretty cool. The Discord updates with all the exclusive content now in the Locals private chat. So whenever there's an exclusive post on Locals, you get notified on Discord. So if you don't want to open Locals every day just to check if there's something, or if you don't check your email or whatever, there's our Discord as well. So highly recommend. And that's all I got. I don't think I forgot anything.
Nope. Yeah, well, thank you for listening and watching.
All right, see you next week.
Tell a man no trouble, I don't want beef, man, I just want vibes. Big man like me, no need for the telephone hype. I got too much getting online. One rule, then dead I'm on site. Wrong move, I bet they gon' ride. No need for the telephone hype, nah. No need for the snoozing. Big whip outside, I'm cruising. Big stick inside, no losing. Better watch out for the snake and Judas is. Don't ask them who this is. I bet they know what I'm moving in. I bet I show it into a dim. How you hate and then lose again? How you hating my vibes? Why you wasting my time? Getting hype on my line. Tell a man I don't want feedback, I just want relax. Brand new whip, 2-tone, I need that brand new hit. You know, like lean back, brand new bits I live in. We back, man, you never gon' like us. Get them on sight now, let them on light. That way they know I'm more righteous. Look at my life, I'm living alright. I'm nice, you know I'm alright. Cause looking like Christ, no need for the hype or